and Ashok Ferry. It's great to have you here with us, Shobha. Please take a seat. And Ashok, this is all yours. Ashok's been on this stage before, but I should introduce him in any case. He's a Sri Lankan author who describes himself as a failed builder, an indifferent mathematician, a barman, and a personal trainer to the rich and famous. But he's a guest lecturer at the Colombo School of Architecture, where he lives with his wife, his 2 kids, his cholesterol, his conscience, and his sense of humor. Okay, so with that, Ashok, over to you, and thank you both so much for being here.
Thank you very much. A very good afternoon to you from sunny Jaipur. I have with me the one and only, the delicious, the delectable, the lovely Shobha De. A big hand for her, please. Shobha De, welcome to Jaipur. Shobha, you are the author, if I can put it like that, of 4 columns in national newspapers. You have a readership of 18 to 20 million people. So that puts you, every week, that puts you into that category where you are actually one of the most powerful women in India. How does that feel?
Oh God, that feels ridiculous. I mean, your description. How can you equate power with something like that? Power is, I see power very differently. It is, I would say, a huge challenge, a huge responsibility to be able to communicate effectively with 20 million people week after week after week. And I've been doing it for 40 years. So without either the readers getting bored or me getting bored myself. But before we get into that, I'd just like to say thank you so very much, all of you, for being here this afternoon. I was so panic-stricken. I said, it's the last day. It's a hot afternoon. I'll be lucky if I've got 5 people in the audience. So thank you, Jaipur, very much. Thank you very much. It's always been a great venue for me. It is the single most important platform, not just for writers, not just for readers, but for airing public opinion that is free and fearless. That's what this festival stands for, and we should fight for that spirit. And that's why all of us are here in the numbers that we are here. And thank you once again for that introduction.
Shobha, tell us how it all began. You were the editor of Stardust magazine in the early days, and it would have been quite difficult as a woman making your way in the world of letters, etc. Tell us a little bit about what it was actually like in those 70s.
You know, I would love to come up with a hard luck story about what a terrible life it was. It really wasn't. I think women in media, we've always had a very, very strong representation for over 40 years, and that continues even today. We've been very lucky. We've found our own voice platforms, our own readers, and done so on our own terms, most importantly. So being one of the youngest editors in India, at the time I was, I think, 22 or 23, I never ever looked at it from a gender filter. It was a job that I was asked to do. It was a job that was offered to me. It was a job that excited and interested me, because we were creating something that was quite new, that was quite different from the genre of film magazines that existed at the time, which were mainly public relations vehicles, talking about new movies and movie stars in a context that didn't really go beyond Asha Parekh has just got 3 new poodles. So Stardust came along and broke the mold. Totally. It spoke a new language. And that was the great and exciting challenge for me.
And obviously it had huge resonance with your readers because it was something new, and I'm told everybody rushed out and bought a copy.
Well, we didn't know that at the time, because even the movie industry was not prepared for Stardust. And they're still not prepared for Stardust, just by the way. And we've almost come full circle, and we are back to PR journalism with a vengeance, with the managers and publicists planting stories, and, you know, space being bought in most of our newspapers to promote a new movie, and it doesn't go beyond that.
Are you disappointed with that kind of...
Very disappointed, because I would imagine that in the 21st century, when we have otherwise such a vibrant press, and we do have, thank God, all the digital platforms where the opinion is still pretty much uncensored, though I'm sure there'll be crackdowns on that, even stronger crackdowns soon enough, unless we resist, and the time to say that is here and now. the PR journalism has come to define journalism, whether it's you're doing coverage, political events, you're doing profiles of politicians, or the powerful, or the industrialists, because most of media is controlled by big business and by politicians. So what real freedom is there? It is pretty much circumscribed by the ownership patterns in media.
Have there ever been attempts to nobble your column to get you to write stuff that people wanted you to write?
I've been very lucky with my editors, and I think they have shown a great amount of faith, great amount of, I would say, even respect for free opinion in their columns. And there was only one column that I can remember in these 40 years that was not carried because it didn't suit the owners, and it was a very what shall I say? I wouldn't say hostile. I would say a critical, truthful, honest, brutal, searing criticism of Sonia Gandhi, and that was the only column that was dropped. I would still write it, and I did publish it on my blog, and it didn't cause an earthquake in India or elsewhere. So I mean, we must have the guts to say what we have to say.
So you've got to be absolutely fearless. One of the columns I read recently was your one about the rape victim,
Yes.
which I thought was an incredibly sort of sensitive and well-written piece. Why is it, I mean, I'm a foreigner here, I'm from Sri Lanka. Why is it that there is this perception that kind of north of Bombay, things get difficult for women, Bombay and south, generally things are safer? What, in your opinion?
To start with, that's mythology, and it's complete distortion. There's not a single city, not a single taluka, not a single district of India that one can claim is safe for women. So the North really needs to reposition itself. Because to be constantly referring to Delhi as the rape capital of India is, in a way, I mean, yes, there were 600 rapes in Delhi which were just in 1 year and just one conviction, which is deplorable, disgraceful, and a sign of the depravity that we live in, the times we live in. But which woman in India is safe today? And that one single case has galvanized public opinion, has galvanized India, has galvanized the women of this country, and given them a voice and given them the strength that today they can fight back. Those protests were not engineered protests. Those protests were spontaneous protests. There were no political groups that were collecting people and saying, go protest at India Gate. They were people, men and women, I'm happy to say, across all divides, who were there because they have had it up to there. This was the wake-up call perhaps that we were waiting for. It's sad that it was provided under such tragic circumstances and with such brutality at its core. But the point is, wake up the country, it did. Wake up the women of this country, it did. And today, I don't think there's any woman here, certainly not in this group, who's going to say, oh, if I'm in those circumstances, I'm going to or make sure there's a Rakhi in my bag, I can quickly fish it out and tie it on my potential and call him my brother and say, please have mercy on me. It's not happening. What has happened is that it's a kind of defining moment in our social history. And we must not miss it for what it is not. It is not a television opportunity. It is not a television story. It has touched lives so deeply. It has pained so many people. And like our president said so eloquently, it was brutality against humanity, not against just one woman. It's no longer about just one rape. It's about brutality in our society, and it has to be addressed in a manner that is befitting and with the seriousness that it deserves. And for that to happen, mindsets have to change. The mindsets of the ruling classes, they have to show they have enough, not just lip service concern, but actual, they mean business. Because at the time that it happened, and there were all those protests on the streets, there was a minister, a cabinet minister who had the audacity to say, the government does not go to the people. They hid in their homes. When there were people out there, innocent people facing water cannons and worse. And had it not been for the media and the role that the media played, keeping up a sustained campaign, Nirbhaya would have been just one more statistic. No one would have cared. The fact that this girl did not come from an influential background, and the only crime she committed was getting into the wrong bus at the wrong time, with men with an iron rod in it and bad and terrible and evil intentions. So it's that inconsequential, a woman's life. You get into the wrong bus and boom, you can be dead. So it is the biggest tragedy of our country that we are facing right now. I would say it is almost a state of emergency that we need to recognize it as that, where women across the board and many, many men across the board are feeling this sense of not powerlessness. For the first time, they're feeling empowered enough to get up and fight back and say it's time to change what requires to be changed within our society, beyond rape, beyond violence against women, beyond crimes against women. We need systemic change of the very basic kind. We need to bring some morality back into the country, which is right now dithering and shaking between just parties who are not just amoral, but so callous to disregard public opinion. So this is what I think the whole Nirbhaya symbol of what happened. She's become the symbol of that fight and a symbol of that struggle.
Thank you for speaking out on that. Talking of brutality in society, I have a copy of Shobha De's new book, Seth G. And the new imprint. First of all, let's talk about this imprint, because I was asking you yesterday, what is an imprint? Please explain to our audience.
Well, I am just so proud. I have to get up and do this because I want to show off a little. The Jaipur Lit Fest has been kind enough to host this launch of my imprint. It's called the Shobha De book, and it is an honor for me. It's a Shobha De book with the Penguin umbrella, and I will be handpicking authors and titles and books. We're launching the imprint with the Kareena Kapoor style guide, meant primarily for those who look at Kareena Kapoor as a style icon. A lot of young India does. And following it up, we have a book out which is on divorce. It's called Breaking Up. It's written by our foremost divorce lawyer, Mrinalini Deshmukh, who has handled a lot of sensitive celebrity cases. And the third book is the biography, a definitive biography of Adi Godrej, one of our extremely courageous and individualistic captains of industry who I respect and know very well. So it's a privilege for me to be here, launch the Shobha De imprint, and I ask for your support for all the titles that are going to roll off. And Sethji, of course, we go back to discussing the book that is already in print, and I understand doing rather well.
And this is Sethji. Talking about brutality in society, boy, do you get it in this book. It is about power. It's about an old man who wields immense power and his cronies who also wield immense power. But at the heart of it, there is this column of ice. There is a woman called Amrita, a hugely interesting study, a psychological study, a woman character. She's called Amrita. She has a penchant for fast cars and fetid sex. But there is much more to her than that, and I would ask you to please read perhaps a page. Would you like to read a page? No, just a page. No.
I think books really should be read. They're so private, and to do a public reading, in any case, authors have been turned into performing fleas, and this is just one more addition to the performing flea task of having to read. I would much rather that we talk and that we take questions from the audience. Those who are interested enough will buy the book and read it for themselves. They don't need me to read it today. Thank you.
Point
Thanks
taken.
very much.
Point taken. Well, let me then...
You guys are okay with that, right? Thank you.
Okay, then let me ask you this question. Are you the ice queen in this?
You know, I'm very, very curious as to why women are asked the most intrusive questions about the characters in their novels. Never men. No one ever asks a guy who's written a political thriller like this is...
Men are just not interesting.
Really? Men are just not interesting. He said it. No, they're never asked, are you that character? And have you lived through those experiences? Is it just imagination? I think there's such a vicarious thrill in knowing about women's lives.
Of course.
Let the mystery remain. I'm not going to tell you.
There you are. There you have it. There you have it. She's not going to tell me. Okay, look, well, if you're not going to read a bit, I'm going to read 2 lines from it. Just 2 lines, so bear with me till I put my specs on. At one point you say, on page 77, you say, Let me tell you something that my stupid sons don't understand. In our political world, you don't have friends, only contacts. Arun Mehta is a contact, nothing more. He needs me, I need him. No favors. Anyone can betray you. Family is the only thing to depend on. That's kind of a bleak view. Is that how it is in those circles?
We live in bleak times, Ashok. It can't get any worse, at least I hope not. And what we see around us has, I'm sure, disturbed every thinking person with a conscience in India. And the complete disintegration of any kind of moral code within politics. We don't even expect our politicians to be honest anymore. And that is such a telling comment. We've become so cynical. We're becoming so accepting of fact that, of course, oh, wo to neta hai, how can he possibly be not corrupt? He has to be a corrupt guy. So in that sense, Sethji, who stayed in my head for 13 long years and refused to go away, an obstinate fellow, till he found his voice and life within the pages of the book, is symbolic of all that is wrong, is all that is terrible, all that we feel contempt for and disdain and disdainful about. And that is we all use our own ways of expressing that. We may be having a dining room conversation and talk about the very same issues. But there are thousands of Sethjis in our midst today. Almost every second person you meet within the ruling class could very easily be the protagonist of this book.
I was just going to say that one of the reasons why we love your books is the fact that we know there is a ring of authenticity, because we know you do have access to these worlds, you move in these worlds in a way that we don't. So when you put them down, we have a suspicion that this is really how it is. Now this novel is very highly colored. The plot is almost Byzantine. And you make a point later on in the book that life is like a film, and film is like life. I mean, 2-3 times you say that towards the end. Now, is this really how it is? Is this, I'm just asking you.
Ashok, at the moment, what we are living through, what we are seeing, even Bollywood couldn't script it better or worse. Because there are times when you wonder, is it life borrowing from art? Is it art borrowing from life? Or are we just there as chroniclers holding up mirrors to the world we live in, to the society we exist in, and telling our stories in our own different ways? And as a storyteller, my primary objective is to tell a good story. It's not a message book. I'm not here to preach and say, but it certainly is a book that comes up with a lot of very uncomfortable truths, and most of us are aware of those truths. If there's anybody who's living in denial in India today, it's not us, it's the ruling class. They don't want to acknowledge that change has taken place. Cataclysmic change has taken place. The young in India cannot and will not be fooled anymore. All the kids who are present here today, you try telling them something that is an obvious untruth, they are not going to accept it, and they're not going to look at Sarkar as Mai Baap. They are not. They are there as in a free country, in a democracy, aware of their rights, aware of their position, and willing to actually go out there and fight for it. This is something very new. It has a lot to do with the new India. It has a lot to do with changing socio-economic contours of the country. The fact that there are many more educated middle class in India, and also that over 70% happens to be a young nation, a young aspirational nation with very restless and impatient and increasingly angry youth. They are not going to sit back and take it lying down.
So you think there will be agents for change? Do you see
absolutely,
a change?
Absolutely. I mean, the 2014 election is going to be the tipping point as far as I can see. And unless the young in the country get more proactive, get more involved, we are going to be stuck perhaps with a system that we have mentally rejected a long time ago. Well, this is the time to make sure that it doesn't remain just in the head, that we go out there and vote for people with the lot that we have, but we vote for change and make sure that the change happens. Otherwise, for the next 50 years, we're going to be doing ourselves a disservice. We'll be doing the next generation a huge disservice.
Let me ask you about your writing, because you're quite a prolific author. Tell me about the effort that it takes to write a book, because there are lots of potential writers out there.
Well, the bad news first, there are no shortcuts. It is really a lot of discipline and a lot of slog. I write pretty much every waking moment. I start writing around 10:30 in the morning and keep going till around 7:30, 8 o'clock, sometimes even later post dinner. So it is a kind of compulsive, it is an obsessive compulsive syndrome. You know, I'm a victim. And I feel, in a way, I feel go into withdrawal if I can't write for a day. I'm actually lusting after my laptop rather than anything else. You even forget sleep, you forget to eat, you forget a lot of other stuff because it consumes you, it does. And I write at a torrential pace, I always have. So it's like the Ganga in full flow, and it's unstoppable. When I'm on a roll, it just happens in a way that is there are no speed breakers when I'm writing. It does consume me, and it's something that is a passion beyond all other passions.
And how long does it take for a book, very roughly?
A year and a half, 2 years, and then it's the production part of it and so on.
So a lot of hard work.
A lot of slog. So, but I'd also like to demystify writing for all the aspiring writers here, that it isn't something that esoteric, that remote, that inaccessible. Every single person has a story to tell. There is a book in everybody. Some people choose to write it, some don't. But you ask anyone here, and every story will have a moment in it or some part of it. There'll be a thread in someone's life, everybody's life, which is worth chronicling, which is worth writing about. Precious and true and wonderful. So, you know, it is that kind of love that you bring to writing, to what you do. You have to love it immensely. And as I'm sure, self-expression is something that human beings alone have the gift for, in whatever form you want to express it. It can be a poem, it can be a painting, it can be, you can be talking to yourself, but you're expressing yourself. You can be writing diaries, you can be writing something that is intensely private just for your own self. But that need to express yourself in some form is really what drives me. I'm sure it drives almost everybody present here today.
Now, you're a Mumbaiker, is that the word for it? Born and bred. You write quite lovingly about it in this book, but in a strange way. You talk about the special stench of rotting fish or the crude language that they insist is Hindi. But I feel at the bottom of it you really do deeply love this city. Would you like to say a few words about that?
Well, Mumbai is more like a character in my novels, really. It's not just a locale. It's a city which is so schizophrenic. I love that about it. I don't like safe cities. I don't like safe. I like the idea of danger. It attracts me a lot. And Mumbai is anything but safe in that sense. It pushes you to the edge. It's a city that's hard, that's cruel, where the worst thing you can say to someone, the worst insult is you're a loser. It's very success driven. But on the other hand, the wonderful thing about Mumbai is that it really genuinely salutes and rewards talent. You can be a nobody from nowhere. And that only happens in our cricket team, let me tell you. That some young man with enormous talent comes up from small town India, makes it big, and within 1 year that person is a super celebrity, but he's done it on his own terms. Mumbai lets you do it on your own terms. It lets you be. And there are any number of success stories, including from Bollywood, whether it's a Shah Rukh Khan, and certainly in our corporate life, whether it's a Dhirubhai Ambani, or people who've come to Mumbai to make it big, to dream big, Amitabh Bachchan for that matter, and have achieved it by working really hard. None of these guys have done it because, they were lucky. You know, luck always happens to other people. So Mumbai does drive a hard bargain, but it's a bargain worth driving, I would say.
Thank you. Now, when we last spoke on a stage, I asked you about this book, India Shining, and that was some years ago. I'm sorry, Superstar India, my mistake. Superstar India, and you were full of enthusiasm and go for the future. Has anything changed in that respect? Are we still pretty much on track?
I would love to say that we are completely on track, and India is going to be glittering and dazzling in the next decade. It is possible. The important thing is, it is possible to do it, provided we have our priorities right, provided we demand and ask questions and get answers to those questions, provided we don't sell out, But all of this, it depends completely on how 2014, how the elections go. And right now we are in a state of flux. What there is missing completely in India right now is moral leadership more than even political leadership. If we had, for example, someone of the stature of Vivekananda right now, it would be a totally different India. Someone who's inspiring, who had a vision, who was intellectual, who had something that inspired not just fellow Indians but the entire world. And that he died at 39, leaving such a legacy behind. We need someone of that kind to inspire a young India. We don't have it. That is I would say that is at the moment our biggest handicap. But having said that, when I wrote that book, it was in 2007 when indeed India was shining. And indeed there was much optimism and there was a great deal of hope and we were on a fantastic trajectory. There was no reason why we should have fallen off that. But there were circumstances that were even beyond India. I mean, 2008, you know what happened to the world. Yeah. And it's inevitable that we got impacted, though the impact it had on India was far less than in several countries around us. And we pulled through. Why did we pull through? Because our richest resource are our people. And they should not be seen as a liability. 1 billion plus brains are out there. If we can only channelize that in the right way, there is nothing in the world that can stop us. And so long as we continue to cherish the ideals and principles of democracy, otherwise if you're playing the numbers game, I mean, China is much beyond. But it's not just about numbers, it's about freedom. And we have it, and we should use it, and use it responsibly enough. And we should take pride in our country and make it grow the way it deserves to grow. And for that to happen, we have to make the ruling class more accountable than it is. We cannot have lunatic fringe groups coming and disrupting platforms, trying to intimidate organizers of a festival of this kind, which is not political in nature at all. There are no politicians here, thank God. There are people who are here because they love books, because they love reading. They're here to support ideas. They're here to support imagination. They're here to support differing opinions of all hues, all kinds. This is what this platform is for. This is why this festival has become one of the most important global festivals, because it respects free thought. And so long as we continue to support free thought, India will shine again, there's no question. But for that, we have to fight for it.
Now that you finished Seth G, let me pronounce it correctly, future plans. Do you start on a new book straight away? Are there ideas bubbling inside your head? I bet there are.
There are always ideas exploding inside my head. It's an overactive, unfortunately. It's a brain that's in overdrive all the time, and I just need to sometimes wind down a bit. I don't know how, but one day I'll find out. But writing fiction is, for me, like going to a luxury spa. I find it very relaxing. Telling stories comes naturally to me. I love it. I find it a stress buster completely. Stories, every human being in the world is a storyteller. Every human being on earth. We've grown up with our grandmothers making up stories just like that. They'd make up a new story every single day, wherever those stories coming from. So long as there is human imagination, we are all storytellers. So yes, there are stories. There are. I'm actually thinking about a trilogy on power. This book explores political power and at its grimiest, dirtiest, most awful. I would like to explore the power that Bollywood and popular culture exert over us, as well as corporate power, because these are the three arms in India that pretty much determine and color and influence our thinking and our lifestyles to a very large extent. So the trilogy is something I'm definitely I'm going to be working on and looking forward to writing.
Okay, there are lots of you out there. There'll be lots of questions, so I'm going to throw it open to the audience. But before I do, I just need one last answer from you. And this is from Ashok Ferre, the personal trainer, and not Ashok Ferre, the writer. How do you manage to look so damn good?
I guess I have as good a trainer as you are in Sri Lanka, but that's not true at all. I've never been to a gym. I don't gym. I don't really work out. I just conspired to make sure that I was born into the right gene pool. That really helped me a lot.
Good, good. That's a good answer. Okay, questions. Do we have any mics?
Yes.
Sorry, over here.
You said we don't have role models like role models of the stature of Swami Vivekananda. Are you despondent on that front? Are you pessimistic on that front?
I don't see anyone on the horizon, do you? Do you see someone of that stature? I'm not optimistic at all on that. I'm despairing, not pessimistic. But the optimist in me is saying, it can happen. You never know. The historical circumstances.
We paid her to say that.
No, one can never lose that sense of optimism and that sense of hope, and you never know that history also conspires sometimes and throws up someone when you most want it, when the country is desperately looking and everything around you seems very bleak. Someone somehow miraculously does show up. So I would never give up hope on that.
Shobha, first of all, I would like to say that both me and my mother are huge fans of your book, Speed Post. We loved the book. We loved the way you communicated to your children through letters. The question I want to ask you is that across all your novels, we see a lot of grey characters, both the protagonists, antagonists, everybody is a grey character. So is it because there is an inherent cynicism in what you've seen in the world, and that is why you feel that real characters are always grey? I mean, why are there no characters which anybody can look up to as a role model and say that, oh, this is the person I want to emulate in life?
Well, the women in my novels are, they're complex. I wouldn't call them grey. They're complex, they're layered like women are, men are. There are many shades, maybe not the 50 shades of grey kind of grey, but certainly the women are not victims, they're not vamps. They always come out on top of their lives through, after a great amount of struggle sometimes. But I would say that this is the first time I'm hearing a woman say to me that the women don't inspire her, but most of the time the women in my books have been very strong and have in fact inspired a lot of young women to say, if she can do it, I can do it, which, yeah, thanks.
Who's next?
Yeah.
Hi.
Good afternoon, and thanks for all your inspiring words.
Thank you.
You talked of the Power trilogy. I think you're missing out one person in the Power trilogy. Actually, it should be
Sports.
quadrology or whatever.
Sports.
No. What I'm talking of is power, responsibility, and accountability.
Yes.
These three things, generally you can kick out. Your guy doesn't perform, he's out. Movies don't run, he's out. Politician doesn't perform, he's out. Who is that guy? Everybody knows who was the general who lost 1962 war for us. Everybody knows who was the defense minister. But who knows who was the defense secretary then? No, that is the
bureaucrat.
The bureaucrat, yeah.
Are you one?
I'm not. That's why I'm telling you this. So I'm saying, in your Power trilogy, this is a factor which is actually somehow missing.
Yeah, you're very right, because they actually do run India. The bureaucrats did run India till very recently.
Who's next? Yeah, there are lots of.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Yeah, you said that there was something you wanted to write about Sonia Gandhi, but you didn't publish. But still,
No,
you
sir,
wrote
I
on
didn't
your
say
blog.
that. No, sir, I didn't say that. It was written.
You couldn't because there was some
It was
problem.
not published by the editor. It was
Yeah.
written by me, and
Yeah.
I published it myself on my blog.
On your
It
blog.
was
But
published.
you are Shobha Day, that's why you can publish it on your blog. But somebody
You can
give
have
the
your own
opinion.
blog
No. If somebody give their opinion on Facebook, they have problem. They can go to the prison. What do you
I
think
would
about
have
that?
exactly the same problem, sir. I don't think there are any special privileges that come with being Shobha Day at all. If at all, it makes me far more vulnerable because the blog is scrutinized much more closely. So is my Twitter account, and so is almost anything that's in the public domain.
That's perfect.
That I put my
ma'am.
name,
That's
name
perfect.
to.
I really appreciate. One more thing is that you know, like you said that Mumbai treat everybody well.
I
as
didn't
long
say
as
that.
you work hard, like Amitabh Bachchan, Shah Rukh Khan, and stuff like that. But it used to be when Raj Thakre was an exit here, not anymore. So sorry to correct you.
It's not about being treated well. I said it gives everybody a fair chance. I think there's a semantics problem here. That's what I said.
Okay, on with the next.
Hello.
I have read.
In the start,
Okay.
in the starting, you told people ask women only such questions to reveal, not about men. Because I think for centuries, women have been a mystery. So if a mystery is there, everybody will like to know about it. Thanks.
We're over there.
Just one sec as we go into questions. May I just request everyone again to not make statements or corrections, but to ask questions. That would be really nice because we don't have very often a chance to meet Shobha Dey. So let's ask questions. Brief, concise, lovely questions.
Thank you.
Having read a number of your books, I feel that the women are rather vulnerable and they make compromises, and then they use their sexuality as a kind of a strategy to achieve power. Would you agree with this?
Well, in Sethi, yes, most definitely. Well, Amrita is a survivor, but her circumstances being what they are, she uses what she can, and she's not in any other way empowered. The only thing she does have is her physicality, and yes, she is driven by ambition and she's driven by power, the same as her father-in-law, and she uses what she can to get there.
Yeah. In your speech, you said that politicians are not here, and thank God for that. But isn't that the tragedy, actually? Because, you know, this is precisely the reason they are so intellectually bankrupt, immoral. They don't spend their time in a place like this. So wouldn't you try to do something to bring them in a forum like this?
I wish.
We've had security issues even without the politicians being around. Can you imagine what would happen if they came in with their lal battis and their 10 bodyguards per politician? I think it's a great festival. It's a very democratic festival. Everybody from the city takes part in it, and I for one, I love the fact that it's so completely depoliticized and de-linked to anything to do with any body's political agenda. That's what makes the festival so special. So whether I would want to keep that spirit of the festival to the extent it's possible without any political interventions. Let's not pollute it, says someone just now.
Yes, here. Hello, ma'am. Ma'am, which one of your books you think should become a film?
It is about engaging them. I mean, you have spoken in your speeches about engaging people who are so...
Perhaps we should have somebody else now at this stage.
Yes, ma'am. Which one of your works, you know, all the books you've written should become a film? You think you should become a film and reach out to a wider audience, maybe? I mean, you know, all your books say a lot. I mean, any of them. So which of you think should become a book? And
Well, all the books have had movie offers, but I haven't felt completely comfortable with the setup. But having said that, I think the new crop in Bollywood, the young directors today, are extremely innovative, they're bold, they're talented, they're making fantastic, very thought-provoking films. There is an offer, 2 offers in fact, for Sethi, so we're in the process of negotiating that. And if it's made into a film, of course, I'd be absolutely thrilled, because which author in the world doesn't want to see the characters come alive on the screen?
Who else? Over there?
Madam, you have referred about Vivekanand, a young leadership is required. But I think Arvind Kejriwal, to some extent, is doing a lot for developing young leadership. How do you agree? And Anna Hazare's movement has also given a way for young leadership.
I have written extensively on both of them and commented on both on television. I would say that both have contributed greatly in tabling the C word, which is corruption. Till Anna Hazare actually made it the centerpiece of his entire movement, which unfortunately fizzled out. Corruption was something that we spoke about in a way that was very distant from us. We didn't want to deal with it and address it in an aggressive manner. The day he brought corruption out to the forefront and the nation rallied behind him, it was a war cry to us, fight against corruption, he performed a great service, and then that was it. Because after that, I don't think there was very much else that he could have contributed. His contribution is big enough. Arvind Kejriwal, he's just started his political party. We have to wait and watch to see how he builds on what was started, and whether there is really a vision that is there behind the political party that is in any way qualitatively different from what the other parties are offering. It's not enough to say my candidates, I'll find my candidates from the people, from amongst the people of India. Well, that's where in a democracy, that's where all candidates come from the people. I mean, they don't land from Mars. So I haven't heard anything about his vision statement that has impressed me too much. But having said that, the biggest contribution that Arvind Kejriwal has made, like Anna Hazare brought corruption to center stage, Arvind Kejriwal had the guts to name names. And there were sacred cows that nobody had ever uttered their name in a public space, which he did. And that requires a lot of courage. That he did that, we must acknowledge that contribution, because after that, I mean, it's all then, it became like almost open warfare. But he was the first one to do it. He named names, and for that we should always be grateful.
Next up.
Not only my dear, but the dear of all of us here, Shobha Day. We are all celebrating Shobha Day. When power becomes the ultimate
Aphrodisiac.
Yes, sir.
Aphrodisiac.
So your book you have to our beloved politicians, may their tribe decrease.
Well, there is satire in that dedication, and it's meant as a very pointed, as a barb against the political system.
Next up, there's somebody over there waving.
Can I ask? Here, Shobha, this side. Towards your right.
It's over here.
Very simple question. You have been to look up to kind of an author for many people. Even on my bookshelf also has a couple of your books. Who's your favorite author?
I like a lot of young, vibrant voices from India, because for the first time in many decades, they've had the opportunity to get published and to be heard. There are lots of absolutely brilliant, top-class writers today I'm very proud of, like an Amish Tripathi, for example. Smart, writes very well, knows his marketing, is his own marketing strategist, and has been in many ways a game changer. But if you were to ask me to pick just one book that if I were to take with me, or if I were ever to grab one book and run, it would be Leo Tolstoy's War and Peace. It's the most satisfying, it's the most enriching, and the most wonderfully written book, which goes beyond just an era. It's more than a passionate love story. It's a very satisfying read. And for every reader, that's what you really look for in a book, a satisfying read.
Who's next?
Hello, Shobha. Hello. Yeah. Yeah. Towards the right.
Please put your hand up or stand up.
Yeah, here.
Okay.
My question is, since you being a writer, and I feel that writers have a social responsibility also, in the wake of this Delhi rape, we heard that somebody, we don't know, in the news it was that somebody would like to write a script on this and would love to make a movie on it. So as a writer, or as a feminist, very aware women, what would be your reaction to it? Because when we heard this, there was a group of women who said, excuse me for saying this, that no bastard should make money out of this pain. So as a writer and as a very aware like woman, what would be your reaction and what would you do not to let it happen?
I would say it depends entirely on the credibility and the reputation and the level of responsibility a filmmaker brings to a project of this kind. So we should not be dismissive that anything that's done on this, because it has on so many ways, it has galvanized India and it has evoked a very strong emotional response from across not just in India, across the world. So it is a subject that deserves to be more widely discussed in whether it's through cinema, through books, and it shouldn't be allowed to die. And but if it's a Ram Gopal Verma, I'd be very worried.
Hello, Shobhaji. It's Maya. Here, ma'am.
To my right, to my left?
Yeah, I'm here.
Right there. Thanks.
I've been cherishing the dream to see you in person for long, and this is for the first time I've got my dream materialized, sort of. But then I've got one more dream. I have completed a novel, and I do feel, as you said, I'm one of those from no one, nowhere yet. Then I just tried to inquire after certain things. I just wanted to find out if there was any list available of publishers I could contact and all. I've written 3 books by now, but still I would like to
But you shouldn't get discouraged, and this would probably be the right venue for you. Just go grab those publishers. They're crawling out of the woodwork. They're everywhere.
I'm not even allowed to enter the room where the authors are.
But you don't need to meet the authors. You need to meet those who publish the authors, and they're everywhere. I can point out to 2 right here.
Actually, we don't know people in person. We find out the way we have
It's not
contacts and all.
tough. It's not tough at all.
So it
And
really depresses a
here.
lot.
But don't get discouraged. Some of the top authors in the world have dealt with 17 rejection slips before someone has.
When we do read things like those, it really replenishes you like new blood with.
It does.
And we do feel that even if we are passing through that phase, that we are being continuously rejected or nobody knows us.
But don't take it as a personal rejection, because if you have faith in your own work and you continue to do what you have to do, which is right, write your 4th novel and your 5th, and you're bound to strike lucky. There's bound to be a publisher who says, I like your work, so don't give up.
See, we know that the authenticity is there. We may be confident of our work and quality and everything.
I'd like to request that we pass it on to someone else, because I think we've had
No
a
problem.
Thank you.
We'll be taking the last 3 questions because we'll be running out of time soon. Is that right?
Hello.
You got time? Okay.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Shreya from Jaipur. Can you see me?
Yeah, I can see.
I've spent many Sundays reading your articles in Times of India, and my best one was the one you wrote as a letter from Rahul Gandhi to Robert Vadra, in which he's scolding him for calling people Banana Republic because of that Sonia ma'am was not putting bananas on the table. So how do you manage to write such gutsy and open-hearted articles?
Well, you know, I have to keep reminding everybody that we are still a democracy. Take advantage of it. No one has yet told us, and no one, I hope, ever will, what we can and what we can't write. And, it doesn't require guts. We are entitled. Free speech is something we are entitled to. And I just feel very fortunate that I have a platform in which I can say what I want to say. And, it was a column that did raise a lot of hackles, and it was almost like a war especially on Twitter and so on about that particular article. It was satirical, but it was 100% true. We have become so thin-skinned, especially our netas, the ruling class, that a word of criticism, a cartoon somewhere, a line somewhere else, a doodle somewhere. If you're in West Bengal, boy, you're marched off to the clink. But surely this is not what we have fought so many years to preserve. So it's not a question of guts. They must learn to handle criticism the same way as the rest of us face criticism in our lives from various quarters and in different ways. They are not immune from that. They are not protected. They don't have some kind of an invisible wall that says, we are the touch-me-nots. They are, in fact, so accountable only to the people of this country that any criticism that is there from you, me, anybody else, is something that not only is it warranted, but they are expected to answer to that criticism. We should also make sure that they answer that criticism, not shrug it off.
Next up.
I want to ask that indeed as it is being said that Indian culture is being influenced by Western culture, and like the incident of Delhi gang rape is also being affected by Western culture. What do you want to say about it?
You mean without Western culture our Indian ladies were not getting raped? Rape has been something that women across the world, in our villages, where have our women been protected, and how can you make the West a scapegoat for your own ills? It's shrugging off your own responsibility. It is blinding yourself to our own realities. When our ex-president Abdul Kalam said that in India a woman's life is worth less than that of the cost of a buffalo or a bicycle, that is the truth about India. Women's lives are dispensable, have always been. And rape is something that is almost seen in our patriarchal society, in our feudalistic society, as a man's birthright. There is a line in this book which a lot of people have responded to, where Sethji, when he's confronted by when his son rapes a young girl, and Sethji says, "Usme kya badi baat hai? Hamare zamane mein we would rape 100 women, and they would keep their bloody mouths shut." Well, today the same woman is not going to keep her bloody mouth shut. That is the difference.
Hear, hear.
Hi, ma'am. I want to ask one question. I'm very nearby you.
Just here. Shobha.
Hi, I'm from 94.3 My FM radio station. And since the youth is really connecting with the literature festival, not really sure of the literature, but the youth is really connecting with the literature festival. And as a mother of 1-year-old, I want to ask just one question. What is that one thing that we are missing in our education system, that present education system we are missing? One particular thing.
That's a very tough question. And one could write a thesis on all that's missing in our education system.
I prepared a lot on this. Since I've become a mother, I've been noticing many things are missing in our education system, especially after the Delhi gang rape.
I would say the one thing is the pattern that we make our kids. The pressure on children today to compete before they're even out of their cribs. They're just toddlers. And you're already teaching them a nasty game called one-upmanship and competition. And the parents are the ones who are first tested to see whether they are good enough to get into a school before the child even has a chance. Pressure on a child to compete is just nauseating and is not making the child a smarter, cleverer person. Most of the time it's leading to children suffering at a very young age from feelings of low self-worth and low self-esteem, because the parents also are forced to be in this rat race that we call our education. But I would say down the ages, the one thing that the biggest flaw that we've had is we've followed an archaic, antiquated, outdated British system of education, which is no longer relevant. We are teaching subjects which are no longer relevant. We have stopped teaching mental math, which used to be the big strength of our country, that our kids could calculate mentally and compete because they didn't need calculators to do it. They were trained to do it from a very young age. It was part of our parampara. That's gone. And learning by rote, to just reproduce, to memorize and regurgitate something on an answer sheet, that is not education. To make children think independently, to make sure that they get a creative boost, that their individual talent is recognized, that is true education, that their full potential is recognized and they are encouraged. We simply don't have it. It's a whole lot of sheep that go from one institution to the next institution, looking at that 99.9 as a cutoff point. Are we nuts? It is insane. This is ridiculous.
Well said. We have time for 2 more quick questions. Very quick.
Ma'am, just to your right. Well, there is this question that the protests that we have against rape, corruption, like the Anna Hazare protest, and then the one about the Delhi gang rape, don't you think that these protests take center stage for, let's say, 1 week, and then they die out, and then they are washed away from the minds of every person except the ones who've been closely affected?
To a very small extent, I would agree with you. But for example, what happened, the Arab Spring, you can't turn up in Tahrir Square every single day for the rest of your life. what it does do is create and generate a tremendous groundswell of awareness. And an awareness, the awareness doesn't die. Maybe you don't turn up and protest every day because you have day jobs, you have to do, you earn a living. But what, that germ that is put inside your head, that never dies, should not die, and in this case, I'm confident will not die.
Okay, last question.
Hi, Shobha. I just wanted to ask you this question since long. You've written a lot about women who use their sexuality to be successful in life. But when are you going to write about a woman who has brains and uses her intelligence only to be successful in life, just like you?
But I think you're misrepresenting the women in my books. Have you read any of them, by the way?
Yeah, I have read quite
and,
a few. And the best one I have liked is Selective Memories.
Okay, thank you very much. No, I'm sorry to have to disagree with you, but the women in my books, apart from this book, and this is a very specific character, and if you read the book, you'll understand her, are certainly not women who are trading their bodies for success. I mean, I would never even by mistake communicate such a message.
No, I don't say you are communicating.
No, I just simply would not. My women protagonists are very strong, proud women who absolutely would not compromise. There may be other characters in the narrative, but certainly not the protagonists who one can accuse of that at all. In any case, fiction, you know, we are talking about stories, and that's it's quite different from what one sometimes may say. In the course of that narrative, there may be characters who do that, but that's reality too. That's a slice of life. We can't run away from it. For every woman who doesn't do that, there could be 10 others who may have done it. But today's India is a different India. And we have the most exceptional women in the workforce, and who are there certainly not because they look a certain way, though our advertising continues to reinforce that stereotype, which is very upsetting. Because the advertising hasn't moved into fifth gear. They haven't recognized this changed, accomplished and proud woman. They're still furthering the stereotype and objectifying and commodifying women in a way that I find immature and frankly just very foolish and demeaning.
Ladies and gentlemen, the incomparable Shobha De.
Free, fearless and magnificent, and that goes for both of you. Shobha, I believe there are 2 more books on the table that need to be unwrapped, so please do the honors. And I think our photographers are clamoring for a second, so this is your chance.
So this is the official launch for the Kareena Kapoor book as well as the divorce book. They'll be available here, and I'd be delighted to, if you go out there, check them out and hopefully buy them.
Ladies and gentlemen, please hold on for a second. Shobha, since you've been so kind about the festival, and I just wanted to use this chance with Shobha's huge audience to thank people who make it possible. Can I please ask you all to give a big hand to the volunteers who've been managing the stage? Come on up. Come on up. Can I have all the volunteers? These young women have been working day and night for the last 5 days, and they've made it all possible. Please give them a big hand. And can we also have a big hand for all our men and women in the tech booth there who've made things run? They've never had a break. Please, big hand for all of them. And both Ashok and Shobha will be signing books. I'd request you to please allow them to get to the book signing area, which is over there. Those of you who don't have books, get them from the Full Circle bookstore. But please do allow them to get there when you want. Once they're there, you can interact with them over there. But please give them a hand. All right. Thanks so much again. We're back with our next session in 15 minutes.